Hello, good day everyone, and welcome to our session today. One of the most difficult questions of language teachers for language classes is, what are they assessing? This is especially true for conversation classes or communicative language classes. Today, we are going to introduce to you the communicative competence model that presents how a language is best learned, how language should be taught, and how language should be assessed. But we need to acknowledge that our actions should be based on the theoretic grounds for teaching. We from the Group 4 are glad to bring you a very meaningful session to focus on the Celce, Murcia, Dernier, and Thorell's model of communicative competence. I am Dan L. Escantilla, and with me are my co-facilitators, Zenia Anila, Christine Elivares, Christine Joy Ocana, and Rizel Hilos. For today's session, the following are our session objectives, or the things that we need to acquire before we end this session. First, let us explain the nature of the model in understanding assessment in language. Second, analyze the impetus for creating the new model. Third, analyze the schematic representation of the model. Fourth, identify the components of the model and its classroom implications. And fifth, identify the assessment implications of the theory and its components. The following are the proponents of the model. First, we have Marian Celce Murcia. Second is Zoltan Dernier. And third is Sarah Thorell. Now, let us analyze the driving force why these people created this model. Here is the list of impetus for creating a new model. First, they have found out that there is the inadequacy of previous models to generate detailed content specifications for CLT or communicative language teaching. Next, this theory is a criticism of Bachman in 1990 and Bachman and Palmer in 1996 models as relating only to the context of language testing, because the previous models are seen to be just tools for language testing rather than a more general model of communicative competence. Third, Celce Murcia, together with her colleagues, are very critical of the type of content specifications that have been developed on an ad hoc basis for syllabus design because they were not built on a model of communicative competence. And lastly, this is an attempt to produce a detailed description of what communicative competence entails in order to use the subcomponents as a content based in the syllabus design. Now, let us proceed to analyzing the schematic representation of this model that is formulated by Celce Murcia together with her colleagues. The model put forward by Celce Murcia et al. Is actually represented by a pyramid enclosing a circle and surrounded by another circle. The circle inside the pyramid symbolizes the discourse competence, understood as the core or the central competence in this model. The top point of the triangle harbors the sociocultural competence or the sociocultural context, while the two bottom ones represent the linguistic competence that includes the lexico-grammatical resources and the actional competence or the organizing skills of communicative intent. The arrows suggest that the various components are constantly interacting with each other in the discourse component, and together they shape the discourse. So the circle enclosing this triangle stands for the strategic competence, which is, according to Celce Murcia et al., is an available inventory of communicative, cognitive, and metacognitive strategies that allow a skilled interlocutor to negotiate meanings, resolve ambiguities, and to compensate for deficiencies in any of the other competences. Now, we are going to take an overview of each component, but later, as the session progresses, we'll be listening to a more detailed explanation of each, with respect to their nature, meaning, functions, and classroom and assessment implications. This model is actually made up of 5 components. The first component is the discourse competence that remains a separate component as defined by Canal and Swain in 1980. The second component is the actional competence that appears as the knowledge required to understand communicative intent by performing and interpreting speech act and speech act set. It is the appearance of actional competence that makes this different from that of Canal and Swain's model, as it separates the ability to understand speech act from social linguistic competence. The third component is a social linguistic competence from Canal and Swain that is relabeled as social-cultural competence to better distinguish it from actional competence. Also, social linguistic is the appropriateness of meaning, whether functions, attitude, and ideas are appropriate to the context. The fourth component is the grammatical competence from Canal and Swain that is also relabeled as linguistic competence, as it includes lexis, phonology, syntax, and morphology. And finally, the fifth one is the strategic competence that is essentially unchanged from Canal and Swain as a set of skills for overcoming communication problems. Now, for us to further appreciate each component and its educational implications, let us listen to our next session facilitators.